guys, Colt 412 here, the creator of 412 Films, needless to say. Now, you guys are probably wondering where I'm at today, right in the middle of my birthday. And you can tell, if I turn around, Tom Devlin's Monster Museum is the place to be at because I've been here once before, and needless to say, I got freaked the heck out of my mind. And you guys never knew what's going to happen here. And if you guys are ever in Boulder City of Nevada, including Las Vegas, feel free to check out Tom Devlin's Monster Museum. It is the place to be at, and you guys can tell it's got a lot of great stuff. So please enjoy the ride, and viewer discretion is advised. If you guys are afraid of movie monsters, please skip ahead to the ending of this video where I'll leave an important announcement. Terrific artillery on this car here. It's a hearse with all the pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns. Yep, the fright zone is over there. And thus far, though, they do it once a year. And you can say Tom Devlin's Monster Museum is the place to be at. So, and there's a hearse. So another hearse that has Tom Devlin's Monster Museum written all over it, and the best place to be at. So let's go inside and take a look. Well, as you guys can tell, Tom Devlin's Monster Museum has a lot of great artwork and some of the movie monsters. And more importantly, Tom Devlin is one of the greatest in the history of movies today and knows how to do a lot of costumes. There's the Leatherface mask. I think looks magnificent since the films. There's the set of Power Rangers mask. Rest in peace, original White Ranger, and of course, Red Ranger. There's the Red Ranger mask. Pink Ranger, and of course the Michael Myers masks, signed by one of the actors I think still has been through a lot, and I think one of the greatest actors of all time. And yet Tom Devlin, I think, is one of the greatest of all time, and no doubt in my mind, greatest in the history of Las Vegas today. So let's press on to the other part. And like I said, viewer advised, if you're scared, be sure to skip ahead to the announcement, and thank you very much. Well, as you guys can tell, there's a chainsaw right there based on the Leatherface. And thus far, though, Tom Devlin's Monster Museum is looking really cool. There's a nice chair. Sorry if it's dark in here, I couldn't get any flash because it's the rules. An amazing sign by Tom Devlin himself. So far, though, amazing statues, and right now, though, Monster Museum entrance already gotten amazing thus far. Holy shoot! There's Bram Stoker's Frankenstein. No doubt, Frankenstein has been through a lot in so many horror genres, even the books. You can tell Frankenstein is already a legend since the olden days, and no doubt in my mind has been original. And there's the Mummy, and no doubt in my mind, the Mummy, I think, has a lot of potential to go a long way in the history of horror genre, and I think should be inducted, knowing it has been since the Horror Hall of Fame days. And there's just so much amazing stuff here. There's the props from Frankenstein, you can tell from the films, Wolfman, and so much makeup tutorial, and I think the actor has been through so much in his better days. Yet though, the Mummy, amazing enough, while Frankenstein was, I think, was at its peak. And yet though, the Nightmare on Elm Street exhibit, I think, would fit it perfectly. Holy shoot, like, I happen to own this movie, Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Warriors, I think was a great film, and an actual autographed picture by the actor, Robert Englund, I think fit the feature perfectly. Now, as we make our way, holy shoot, the claw marks here really tell the story of Freddy Krueger. While the monster himself has been through a lot, he was bullied, he was disrespected, and holy, there's the monster himself. The claws of Freddy Krueger. Man is a legend. He's been through a lot, does comedic jokes, but there's no doubt in my mind that Freddy Krueger has been a legend in the horror genre, while you can tell this terrific artillery looks just like the character, and no doubt in my mind is a legend. And wow, these zombies of the undead, says it right here, undead medical supply, you need it, we got it. And these are straight from the zombie genre, and you can tell these zombies are freaky, but George Romero created so many great zombie films and freaky as heck, but there's no doubt in my mind that this has already become a great thing thus far. And wow, holy shoot, there's the final girl who played Alice in the 4th Nightmare on Elm Street film and the 5th, Dream Master and the Dream Child. And yet, no doubt in my mind that she is a legend and has been through a lot in store signings, and I think still as a legend in my book. But let's press on to the other exhibit. The Maniac Cop, played by the late great actor Robert Z. Darrow, I think is a great legend in his own rights. Did so many great Maniac Cop films, while Matthew Cordell has been set up for a crime he did not commit, but it's just truly freaky. But the Nightstick is truly great. The film of the Maniac Cop has triumphant history, but I think, in my honest opinion, it should have gotten a 4th film, but it looks really cool. And here we have Bruce Campbell, aka Ashley Williams, Ash for short. And needless to say, amazing history of the Evil Dead franchise, but deer on the head there looks, ugh, good thing it's not laughing at me. Well, there's the other reason why I came here. I'm not in the mood to play with you. Chucky has triumphant history, but aka Brad Dourif, I think, has been through a lot, playing a lot of great films. One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I think, was pretty cool, but really played a great character like Chucky, aka Charles Lee Ray. And triumphant history in the history of John Carpenter, where none compare to the legend himself, Michael Myers. I don't know how he got here all the way from Vegas, but the man lives all the way in Haddonfield, Illinois, but triumphant history in the history of the genre. But Halloween, I think, will forever be known as a classic. The actor who played him is a legend, no doubt about it in my mind, and amazing signings, but the retail's really good. Here's the Leatherface section. While Leatherface has played in so many films, while Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the first film I ever saw, but I already saw the second one, but not the third one yet. But if you guys think I should check out the third film, let me know in the comments. While the history of the mask itself has triumphant detail, while the chainsaw itself has a huge history. And there's a cowboy boot, but don't know who that belonged to, but at least it's got a triumphant history of genre, but legends come in all shapes and sizes, all I could say. And we are on to none other than another plot from the history of the film with the main man himself, Leatherface. And let's just hope the hammer don't come at me. It's just freaky as heck just looking at him. The mask itself has terrific detail, and I think this Leatherface is truly an original and forever be known as a classic. And there's his great-grandfather. Grandpa here has been through so many Texas Chainsaw Massacre films. He was in the very first film, and last I checked, he was in the second, leading into the third film. While as we proceed, and thus far though, we walked through the bridge. Holy shoot, didn't see him there. Behind the Mask. Another film that I've not seen yet, but it looks kind of freaky, but I'll be sure to look into it next time. But let's get straight to the... Oh! Another guy I never saw yet, but freaky as heck, but... little nervous walking in the other room, so wish me luck and let's proceed to the other room, please.
Don't you feel like one of them was gonna come at you?
This freaky as heck. This guy I did not see coming. He looks like the devil. Well, now then, we're in the other section, which is the classic horror genre. Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees, and didn't see you there, Jason. My goodness, look at you. You like came out right of a comic book. So, fun fact though, Jason Voorhees has had a few comic books already, and already become the main legend in the history of the horror genre. And yet, Jason Voorhees has a triumphant big-time moment history. As you could tell, Jason went on from wearing the hockey mask played by Kane Hodder and some of the other great legends that ever played Jason. And of course, welcome to Camp Crystal Lake, as it says. While Jason has been through different changes when playing the character to Kane Hodder, and I commend Mr. Hodder for playing one of the greatest characters of all time. And the metal mask of Jason was from Jason X, and more importantly, I think really had a huge history in the horror genre. And Kane Hodder had played Jason on a few times on numerous occasions. Sadly, he didn't play Jason in the Freddy vs. Jason film. But as you can look here, Mr. Hodder has played Jason here from Jason Takes Manhattan. And as you can tell, the boombox has had its better days, but but nevertheless, though, Jason, I think, is a classic horror movie monster, but no doubt in my mind will forever be known as a classic. And yet, though, in the other part of the section, I think, is the Spider Gremlin, straight from the Gremlins film, which is the sequel in New York. And the character has its better days. Man, just looking at it freaks me out. And I'm not a fan of bugs these days, folks, but at least it's had better days, in my opinion. But anyways, straight from the horror genre, from my birth year of 1996, signed by one of the greatest legends of all time and the final girl of the Scream franchise, then none other than Ghostface. The same phone calls that always say, like, what's your favorite scary movie? But needless to say, though, Ghostface has had better days in the horror genre, but normally he had different identities, but in the genre. And if you guys want to know more about that, if you guys think I should do fun facts about this film, no. But as you can tell, Wes Craven is a legend. Wes Craven has normally filmed every single film imaginable. He filmed the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, where, fun fact though, it was the first ever horror film created by New Line Cinema, and was the same film that built its walls today, from where everyone is sitting and where everyone's watching at home. And rest in peace to a great legend in the form of Wes Craven, and I think one of the greatest legends of all time in the horror genre. Let's move on to the next exhibit. Now, in this next exhibit is another film by Clive Barker, which is the Hellraiser franchise. Hellraiser has its history of films played by the lead character Pinhead, and it's had its remake in none other than the new Hellraiser film throughout its entire history on Hulu, which I've already seen, but it's freaky as heck. But yet, Clive Barker has its triumphant history, while Pinhead himself has another history. While this guy here is eyeless, but I think has had its triumphant history in the horror genre. But Clive Barker, no doubt in my mind, filmed Hellraiser since the late 80s throughout the 90s, and I think it's had its better days. But needless to say, Hellraiser, truly a classic, but I think we're on to the next exhibit. Let's move ahead. And nevertheless, though, there's another horror movie I've not seen yet, but The Hills Have Eyes. Well, if you can look here from the shoes, look at the drool on this guy's face. The Hills Have Eyes, I think, was original, but when the remake got started, man, it was sadistic and brutal. But if you guys can see here, this is the original Hills Have Eyes, filmed by none other than Wes Craven. But the details here look pretty similarity to this movie poster here of The Hills Have Eyes. And if you guys can see, this is actually an exact replica of the actor himself who played the character. There's no doubt in my mind. This is just freaky as heck. And if you guys can see here, this is an exact model of the actor. And there's no doubt in my mind, this is a great exhibit. But if you guys think I should do a review on horror films on Halloween specials, please let me know. But I think I'll look into it, so we're on to the next exhibit. Come this way. And yet, nevertheless, though, we are right now looking at the Leprechaun from the Leprechaun franchise, and you could tell this is a terrific motility on the Leprechaun himself, and whoever stole his gold would either chase him down and try to get it back. But this ain't no friendly Leprechaun, folks, but he's been in Leprechaun in the Hood, Leprechaun Back to the Hood, but he's been through so many films, and needless to say, I think the Leprechaun looks kind of interesting. So, let's move on to the next movie monster. Well, for the movie Ghouls, I've never seen the film before, but I know it's had its traditional film rates, but it had different varieties, but as far as I do know, and there's the little ghoul right here. Man, this ghoul looks freaky as heck. As you can tell, his teeth are sharp. This guy looks more like a crocodile than a dang darn ghoul, but hey, what can you do? Straight from the Ghouls 2 film, but at least these guys have a history of horror genre, but at least that's where inspiration came from, like either the crocodile or the snake from the Anaconda films, but at least this is actually really cool. Let's move on to the other characters, and I think this has already gotten more interesting. Ah, yes. The words obey. Straight from the movie, They Live. These monsters here, I think, look more like aliens than movie monsters, but terrific motility on the outfits themselves. The story is that wrestling legend Roddy Piper was starring in this film, and of course, rest in peace, Roddy. Great legend, in my opinion. Surely knows how to at least pull off a lot in the horror genre. But Roddy Piper has been through a lot in his career in wrestling and acting, but at least Roddy Piper has had a great moment in history of filming. But the story is, once you put on the sunglasses, then you see him, and you see everything just normal again. But at least the next part we're moving on to is the props. I hope you guys are enjoying this video so far. But let's just get straight to the props. In movie monsters, these props look really cool, and this movie I've never seen yet, but it says it here, Halloween Night. These guys usually have a huge genre of rock and roll, but it says here it was screen used. Sorry, I'm a little mixed up here. It says here, Ouija's Halloween Night, but I think it had something to do with a little joy time. But the other side here is the battle is over, the war has just begun for Puppet Master X. And Puppet Master, I happen to own half of the collection. There's pictures from the original film, and these were actually used props because there's Blade, screen used. And yet there's Blade again, right beside Pinhead. And yet Pinhead, I think, has had a triumphant opportunity to appear before the genre, but these are actually screen used and actual props. And here is the other case involving 6-shooter. Like it says here, there's the scripts, screen used. Wow, this is actually amazing that there's Jester, there's Drillhead, and yet 6-shooter, I think, looks more like a dang darn tough son of a gun with those guns. And yet there's Pinhead once again, right beside Blade, in the original Puppet Master. But I think I have half of the collection thus far, and I wish I had every last one of them. And yet here are other characters that look kind of weird. There's the Wolfman, there's looks more like a colonel. And there's the 6-shooter and another blade. Looks more like the devil. There's the freak show circus of horrors. And this guy, I think, looks like he needs a little bit of medical help, but there's Prince of Mars. And nevertheless, though, this mask and details of the character look really cool. And here's the ginger dead man that was actually screen used throughout the film. And needless to say, there's just so much here that none can compare to the horror genre. There's the evil Bong characters, like other characters that are used in the film, and there's the Mega Piranha. And that face right there, just so freaky. And there's the Mega Piranha. It would eat anything in sight. I could say the less, though. But moving on here, as you can tell right behind me, is the actual Night of the Living Dead poster. Zombie classic, the original classic, before we got the remakes. And there's the poster itself. Here are the other screen-used products. Some are clowns, but as you can tell, Killjoy is one of the characters I don't know about yet, but I think the horror genre began with other killer clowns and all that, but Pennywise is one of them, which I'm not going to film because there's health and safety considerations. But as you can tell, these other characters are so freaky. But as we move ahead here, there are other props and other things we've never seen yet, but these were actually screen used in the films. But the turkeys are so freaky as heck. And over here is a character Teddy told me to was actually filmed and created by Tom Devlin himself. And no doubt in my mind, I have not seen Teddy told me to yet, but it looks like a great character as we continue to move on. Oh, shoot. There's an alien right there from the Alien franchise. The thing that this mechanical monster has been through so much in the horror genre. There was Predator versus Alien, and I think has already gotten big thus far. Let's move on to the other exhibit before I even lose my lunch. Well, here is The Exorcist, and needless to say, it had a few films, and already another movie coming out, The Exorcist of the Pope, which is actually a true story, but The Exorcist was creepy as heck, and they said the film was cursed, but I don't know why it is at this point. But the makeup detail on the horror genre really looks good as we are moving on to other characters, just as the Toxic Avenger. The Toxic Avenger looks more like a superhero than a movie monster, but there's some disabled guy who fell into a batch of toxic waste and made him look like a superhero, but he's really done a lot throughout his time. And there's the toxic waste, and yeah, look at his shoes. Look like he's been in the mental asylum a little bit. But anyways, as we are moving ahead to the Planet of the Apes, which you guys saw earlier, right next to the alien from Aliens. But yet, this actual guy, I think, looks more like a cuddly teddy bear than a movie monster, but it looks really cool enough. And I think I may have entered just the Twilight Zone. But the history books of Planet of the Apes is that it was done by great visual makeup effects, and yet more interesting than what we are seeing here today. And let's move on to the next exhibit. Well, this guy freaked the heck out of me right as I came in. The Creature of the Black Lagoon is a horror movie from the old days that my grandma happened to watch, but hard to believe that the creature from the Black Lagoon is freaky as heck, and that you guys can tell that Beetlejuice happens to be here, and one of the greatest childhood classics. And I'm even excited to hear the news that Beetlejuice is actually getting a sequel. But moving on ahead, behind me is one of the classic movie monsters today, the Wolfman. The Wolfman, I think, has had a triumphant opportunity. As you could tell, this guy has been through a lot in the horror genre. But Lo Kane Jr. Has, sorry if I pronounced the name right, Lon Chaney Jr. Thanks, has been through a lot in the horror genre. He played the Wolfman on numerous occasions, but the Wolfman here has had a huge history. The only way that killed off the monster was this cane. The cane here has had a triumphant history. If it was struck by a silver bullet or a silver cane, the Wolfman would die. But nevertheless, though, look at the look on the eyes of this monster. It looks more like a dang darn horror monster than a dang darn, like a freaking hairy monster than a dang darn werewolf. But needless to say, this monster has a huge history. And as you guys can tell, we're on to The Munsters, which was actually a great TV series back then that my family had watched back in the day. But needless to say, the Munsters have had, there's the son, and there's Herman Munster, who has been created, and yet another film created by Rob Zombie, which told the story of the Munsters and how it all began, and I think was a great story to tell. As you guys can tell here, it tells the history of the Munsters, and it has a lot of classic detail, and I feel like I'm right in the spotlight at the moment. So let's go ahead and move on to the next exhibit before I lose my lunch and breakfast, including my dinner. Now, for the next movie monster, sorry for the boys and girls at home, this is the Hunchback of Notre Dame, the original movie monster. And yet the history of the Hunchback of Notre Dame used to be an actual horror film, and from my point of view, it's had a lot of great history to tell. And here is Lon Chaney Sr., who has played the Phantom of the Opera, and of course the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And there's the Phantom himself, Phantom of the Opera, who has been through a lot in his career. And if I can get a closer look at the guy, not a pretty sight. But the man knows how to tell a story, in my opinion, throughout the history books of the Hunchback. And yet, we're in a middle of a movie section, as you guys can see here. This little guy I forgot to get, known as the Critters. The Critters have had a triumphant history in the films, and known as the Critters 2. Critters 1 got your blood pumping. This time they want more than a taste. But these critters, I think, are looking more like Hornswoggle a little bit, but but nevertheless, though, I think these films I've never seen before, and I think I should check it out one of these days. So as I walk in through the other part of the halls, here is Creepshow, where it says here, the most fun you'll ever have being scared. But the Creepshow my aunt owns on DVD, and I think is a classic, but it tells different stories. But no doubt about it in my mind, I was even told that Stephen King showed up in one of the stories ever told, but I never thought it would have come down to that. So anyways, let's press on to the other exhibit, and let's see what else we could see here. And yet, this classic movie monster is known as Nosferatu. Now, Dracula has had a huge history of filming, while Nosferatu, on the other hand, had a different story to tell. It was all the way in Germany, as you can tell here. It was filmed in 1922, way back when there was no sound in cameras, just good old words and a little bit of music in the background. And yet Nosferatu has had a big history, and of course, we are now in the movie theater section of Tom Devlin's Monster Museum, and these are all hand sculpted by Tom Devlin himself. And this is actually an incredible sight to see. They usually host like horror movie events here, and yet after all of that, this is actually known as the Cinema Sideshow, and I think Tom Devlin has really outdone himself here, folks, and a true time to be at, and really a true time to be living in Nevada, or in this, more appropriately, a more better time to check out some of the classic hand sculpted and of course the Bright Sun that takes place every once a year on Halloween. And I think we are at the end of the museum, and I think it's time to get out of here before I even lose my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But let's get out of here. Yes, before I forget, before I leave here, all I want to say is they got an amazing arcade set here at Tom Devlin's Monster Museum. There's the return of the Swamp Thing, which I think was originally a DC character or a Marvel character, but anyways. Here's Phantasm 2, looking more like a weird nightmare. Here's the arcade, and it's got so many great games to play. Mostly, I think they're living up to the name. The monsters, movie monsters, you name it. There's Real Evil, there's Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, and of course a claw machine with prizes. But sadly, they're out of order, but I hope they do get them fixed. As you guys can tell here, the House of the Dead 2, and the original House of the Dead. And then sadly, this one's out of order too. Let's go ahead and head on out of here. Well, that's about does it right here for Tom Devlin's Monster Museum, and you guys can tell what's behind me, the Ecto-1, straight from the Ghostbusters Afterlife film. And needless to say, this has been a lot of fun being here at Tom Devlin's Monster Museum. And anyways, and the important announcement is that after my birthday and after the HWF episode, I will be giving a special shout out to anybody that has been through a lot. But more importantly, what I'm trying to say is give a special shout out to some of the greatest YouTubers I know today that has a big heart on their sleeve. And I want to thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on post notifications so you don't miss a video. And this video has already been the best one yet. Thank you all so much for watching. Tell my friends and everyone else I know I said, what's up?